thank you, and good morning, everyone. Alberta's farmers and ranchers work hard to put food on the table here at home and across the world. That's why today I'm introducing Bill 44, an act to amend the Agricultural Operation Practices Act. The Agricultural Operations Practices Act, or I'll refer to it hereon as AOPA, and its associated regulations provide the legal authority for oversight of confined feeding facilities and manure storage. In recent years, there has been a rising interest from the private sector to establish anaerobic biodigesters or biogas plants, as manure produced on confined feeding operations can be used as an input source in biodigesters to produce biogas and fertilizer. The biogas can be refined into renewable natural gas that can be used to produce heat and electricity, which creates an alternate revenue stream for these producers. And the nutrient-rich fertilizer produced on the other end, called digestate, can be used to grow crops and improve soil health. Currently, digestate is regulated through an MOU. However, as the agri-processing and biogas sectors expand and more anaerobic biodigesters come online, Alberta needs to ensure there is a regulatory clarity, flexibility, and opportunity to manage organic waste, including digestate, to provide investor confidence. The proposed changes formally bring digestate under the legislation and allow producers to store, compost, or directly land apply it. Changes will provide this emerging industry with regulatory certainty to do business and potentially create jobs in rural Alberta. And with access to abundant inputs from livestock operations, our province will be an attractive place for investment in the biogas industry. Farmers, ranchers, and ag processors produce organic byproducts like crop residues or vegetable waste that cannot be used for things like animal feed. These organic materials are either sent to landfills or waste management facilities. This needlessly creates waste and fills municipal landfills with organic material, but there is a better way. We have a huge opportunity to divert these materials to the biogas industry, which is looking for feedstock. That's why we are bringing forward additional proposed changes that will give producers access to these alternate nutrient sources to be stored, composted, or land applied to grow crops and maintain soil health. This provides waste management options for agri-processors and supports a circular and sustainable economy. Overall, these amendments advance the sustainability of our province's agricultural sector and support economic opportunity in the sector. Also included in the changes brought forward through Bill 44 are administrative amendments to align AOPA with updates made to the Municipal Government Act to include the recognition of intermunicipal development plans. Changes also clarify that all affected parties have 20 working days to provide comments on an application before approvals and clarify the roles of NRCB Board Approval Officer and Inspector. Finally, Bill 44 would extend the regulation's expiry date by 5 years to 2030. Farmers and ranchers and agri-processors have asked the government to create regulatory certainty to manage organic material and create economic opportunity. Alberta's government has listened, and through the changes proposed in Bill 44, we are responding to build our economy, advance sustainability, and support our producers. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to stakeholders for their comments on Bill 44.
Thank you, Minister Sigurdson. I'm Kent Hollowath with Alberta Beef Producers, Vice Chair for the current year. On behalf of Alberta beef producers, I want to extend a sincere thank you to Minister Sigurdson and the Government of Alberta for their commitment to supporting innovation in our agricultural sector. Agriculture is a key part of Alberta's economy, and it is encouraging to see leadership that recognizes the importance of keeping our industry strong, sustainable, and competitive. Alberta beef producers fully support the updates to the Agricultural Operating Practices Act, which will foster diversification, drive growth, and strengthen the entire agricultural supply chain. When producers have the tools and flexibility to be innovative, the entire industry benefits, from farm gates to dinner plates. Sustainability is at the heart of beef production. Our industry is dedicated to responsible land and resource management. These changes help remove unnecessary barriers to our environmentally sustainable practices and forward-thinking solutions. We strongly believe regulation should enable, not hinder, the ability of both sustainability and innovative. Alberta is already a leader in both energy and beef production. Allowing for sustainable biogas generation is a natural next step in our province's commitment to responsible resource use. With the challenges Alberta farmers face today, with drought, unpredictable markets, and the constant threat of tariffs, our margins are under pressure like never before. These changes will help unlock new income streams for producers while also contributing to Alberta's energy future. This is a win-win solution that strengthens our economy, our sustainability efforts, and the livelihood of family farms across the province. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Chad Menu. I'm a cattle feeder from the Barhead area. I'm representing Alberta cattle feeders today. Alberta has a vibrant cattle feeding sector representing 70% of all the fed cattle within Canada and employing 19,000 Albertans. Today I'm excited with the proposed changes to AOPA that will help our industry contribute to the renewable energy potential that this province has. There are obvious synergies between the livestock sector and renewable energy. Investing in biodigesters is a win-win for cattle feeders and the environment. Biodigesters capture methane from manure, reducing emissions for our sector, and at the same time create renewable energy. I am proud to be involved in beef production. This is a positive step for our industry to be more sustainable for future generations. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to questions. So I'll see Sean's hand up. So Sean, we'll start with you. Just a reminder, everyone, that we'll have one question, one follow-up before we move to the phone. So go ahead, Sean.
For the minister and for either stakeholder that wants to comment, just looking for an update on the tariff situation. Obviously, I think it's April 2nd. We may see more tariffs, but how are people in the ag sector so far weathering this storm, and what sort of preparations are being done for next month?
Well, definitely it's top of mind. That's why our department and our entire government has been actively working with stakeholders, but definitely top of mind for our farmers and ranchers in the province. We have had formal meetings related to tariffs with all our major stakeholders to hear their input, as well as major companies and processors and agri-processors in the province. Of course, there is a deep concern, and they understand the impact of what these tariffs could mean for the industry as a whole. Of course, that's why we've been proactively working with our colleagues in the U.S., making sure that they understand how integrated our food supply chain is, and that Alberta is a valued trading partner with the U.S., and that working with us under the current CUSMA agreement strengthens our food supply chain and is in the best interest of both the U.S. and Canadian citizens when it comes to food safety, security, and affordability. We have and are working on both short-term, medium, and long-term strategies. Right now, of course, one of the best things we can do to support our local producers is to buy local. As well, on the federal issue, we're looking at increasing interprovincial trade. Long-term, of course, we always have to look at diversifying markets and strengthening economic corridors, logistics, and supply chains to get agricultural products to additional markets, and that's something we've been working on for years. I'll just see, is there any additional comments?
Please, we would love to hear from people working in the industry how they feel about tariffs and what the impact could be on your business and how you're strengthening your business to survive that storm, potential storm. We don't get to hear from rural Albertans all that often, to be frank.
Well, as a cattle feeder, we're very much used to having lots of issues that we have to solve. I mean, obviously, weather is a big factor. The tariff thing is definitely going to be a challenge. It's top of mind of all beef producers, but especially us in the cattle feeding sector. We have an awful lot at stake. We export a large volume of our beef goes to the U.S. In return, there's a bunch of trade that comes back, of course, from the U.S. into Canada as well in the form of live animals. And in Eastern Canada, a lot of the beef that actually gets sold in the grocery stores in Eastern Canada is actually origin from the U.S. So it's a very integrated system. It's a system that's worked extremely well, for decades and years. And we're just hoping that we can weather this tariff storm and we have a positive outcome to it. But it's, of course, it's an unknown, and it's definitely a stressor to our industry at the time.
Thank you. Just a follow-up for the minister, if I could. Just on today's announcement, are there trade implications? I understand this was probably in the works for a while with the MOU and that sort of thing. Are there any trade implications here? Like, does this make our industry more efficient, more competitive, less reliant on transferring any products across the border, or is this not related?
Well, this is really more about managing within the province, but of course, as you heard from the stakeholders, that any way that we can continue to make improvements to legislation in government that helps them compete on the global stage, we're going to move forward with those initiatives. And one of which for our cattle feeding industry is these changes related to renewable natural gas and providing them the ability to invest in new technology that builds a whole new it advances us in sustainable farming practices. It improves their profitability, and this is a good news story. This is really what we're talking about when I continue to defend our farmers and ranchers, how they're leading in farming sustainability across the world, and this is the kind of technology that they're investing in. And I think this is a great story for Alberta, our producers, when it comes to environmentalism and sustainable farming practices.
Lisa?
Lisa Johnson, the Canadian Press. Also, sorry, off topic. But for Kent and Chad, I'm wondering if you can speak to, Minister, you said that you've been meeting with all the major stakeholders regarding the tariffs issue. But I'm wondering if you can speak to, during those discussions, what you're hoping the government of Alberta can do to support your industry amid the impacts of tariffs. We've got $4 billion set aside in a contingency fund in the budget. We don't know the details of how or how much or what exactly that tariff, the portion that will be for tariffs, what it's going to do. So I'm wondering from Kent and Chad if you can just talk about what kind of supports you might like to see, what you're asking for the province to do. Please.
Yes, thanks for that, for the question. So yeah, tariffs are nasty and mean to the industry, and they're affecting all the industries. But one aspect we've been, as Alberta beef producers, have been working for long before tariffs came along was improvements to our business risk management programs. So we're looking for the ag stability changes. There was a pilot program that ran with ag stability that would be more responsive for cow-calf producers. In this last year, we're hoping that some of the changes from recommendations from that pilot program could and will come into effect to help be more responsive to the cow-calf industry and along with the livestock price insurance program. We've been promoting that amongst our producers and been working with Mr. Sigurdson's department and talking regarding trying to get some changes and trying to look to get cost shared, but that in premiums, but that also is in conjunction with the federal government, that one will have to come into play as well. So that's a wait and see, but right now, the ag stability, the changes under the pilot and increasing the cap would certainly help out our producers at this time. Thank you.
I would just like to add that obviously the price of livestock will be immediately affected, just with the nature of the cross-border trade back and forth between live animals and beef that gets exported. So it's, again, I don't have a solution to the problem, but I can just, just write to reiterate that our industry is definitely going to be affected, very much so.
Do you have a follow-up to that, Lisa?
I just want to provide a little context to this, to understand that when they're talking about the business risk management programs that are delivered through AFSC in our province, they're a cornerstone to be able to mitigating risk within our agricultural industry, and they're incredibly important. The changes and the collaborative work we've done with our industry stakeholders in the province, we have brought to the FPT table to work with our federal counterparts. And what is important to understand is the changes proposed have to be agreed upon by all provinces and the federal government. The BRM programs are a cost share between the province and the federal government, and agreements and changes have to be agreed upon across the FPT table and signed off by the federal government, because it is a cost share program with the feds. We have been advocating and working with all of our stakeholders to make sure that any required improvements to our business risk management programs are put on the table. We want to make sure that we have programs that work across the entire industry. Right now, programs like livestock price insurance and agri-stability are critical pieces when you look at how they could work to be able to offset some of the losses that potentially could happen as a result of the tariffs.
And in terms of like what the province is looking at, I don't suppose you want to share any details about what's on the table when you're speaking within government about what you could do with that contingency fund. What is on the table with the contingency fund?
Well, I think it's important to understand that there's an increase of $2 billion into the contingency. As well with that, that is going to need to be set aside for all impacts that may result as the tariff, and that's as it's been built in. Of course, we don't know what that is going to look like. This is an ever-changing situation, and we are actively working as a government to see how we can help. But I'll harken back to, as a province right now, we have to take a look at what we can do right here and now, and have medium and long-term strategies, of course, built if this tariff situation drags on for a long period of time. I've been very forward in saying our department's going to be moving forward to advocate on a buy local campaign, which can have a direct positive impact to our agricultural industry. And as well, we're going to work with our provincial counterparts to improve interprovincial trade. Those are things that this government is focused on right now, because we know those can have an immediate impact to relieve some of the pressure due to the tariff situation. Yep.
Yeah, I'll continue on that thread. Sorry again on the tariff situation. I'm just wondering from Chad and Kent if you can just paint a bit of a picture in terms of dollar figures or amounts in terms of how much we trade for beef and cattle with the United States. Like, just how much of a loss are we looking at? Do you have any line of sight in terms of impact on a dollar figure of what that 25% could mean? I know it's a lot of numbers and projections, but just to paint a picture in terms of what the impact could be on this industry. And what that'll mean in terms of production or potential job losses.
Yeah, I off the top of my head, I can't remember the total dollar figures of beef trade to the U.S. I should know that, but I don't. But what I can tell you is that a live fat animal right now is approximately worth $4,500. So if you throw a 25% tariff on a $4,500 Canadian animal going south of the line, obviously the tariffs could impact us up to 25% on any animals that are going south. Currently, I'm thinking there's probably 5,000 to 10,000 head of cattle probably get exported, live cattle, to the U.S. every week. Fat cattle would be my guess. So it's definitely it definitely has a very big impact on the price that we're receiving at our farm gate for live cattle, for sure.
I guess just in looking at those solutions, when you talk about, I think medium term or longer term, looking at diversifying the markets, what markets are we looking to? Again, if we have any dollar figures and just how much we could be making up.
We have lots of other export markets within the world. I mean, obviously Mexico, Japan, Korea, our largest, probably our largest trading partners other than the US. But again, going back to what I spoke about earlier, we're used to, for decades, we've had a very, porous border with the US as far as beef trade, live animals going back and forth. I mean, we have packing plants sitting in the northern states of the US that rely on live Canadian animals for harvest. And we actually have excess feeding capacity within Alberta right now, where we actually rely on importing feeder cattle up into southern Alberta to actually fill feedlot space. So it's very much an integrated system. It's worked very, very well in the past, and I mean, with tariffs coming in, if tariffs were a long-term, the industry would have to pivot, and some of those long-term strategies and things that have worked in the past we'll have to revisit and find alternative markets for our beef, for sure.
Okay. We'll now move to the phone, so operator.
Just make a
Oh,
comment
sorry,
there?
go ahead,
Sorry.
my bad.
Sorry. Yeah, no, the immediate effect on the beef production certainly is at the feedlot sector with live fat cattle being exported. From the cow-calf producer's standpoint, that trickle-down effect is going to hit us come this fall if the feedlots and their fat cattle are still being tariffed at that 25%. Stands to reason that, okay, they're no longer receiving their true dollar value for them cattle paying the tariffs. They now have less money to spend on purchasing wean calves or cattle to refill their pen. So that trickle-down effect, that 25% is going to roll into the cow-calf production come fall. Currently, market sales since January on really hasn't shown a decline in cattle pricing at the auction market levels. But if these tariffs continue on into the fall calf run into 2025, then that's when I think we'll see the big effect to the cow-calf producer.
Okay, we will now move to the phone. So operator, you can put through the first caller.
Our first question comes from the line of Catherine Bukowski from Alberta today. Your line is open.
Thanks very much for taking my question. So you touched on this a bit, but when I first heard about biogas, it was way more expensive than natural gas. Why do you think we're seeing the interest in biogas now?
Well, when you look at the ability for our industry to be able to manage both on-farm manure, but also diverting a lot of additional organic products away from landfills, and the fact that that there's a proven science to be able to generate renewable natural gas off that. It's a new technology that builds into sustainable farming practices and allows an additional market for those for that industry to be able to sell that renewable natural gas into the market. So this really is about increasing efficiencies on farm, being more environmental, and providing an additional market to improve the viability of our beef industry and livestock industry in the province.
And how much room is there to grow for digestate and biogas?
I think there's an incredible potential when we see the proliferation of biogas both in the US and the EU. We hear rumors that there could be up to $3 billion of potential investment in Canada. We want to make sure that our regulatory structure here in the province is streamlined and is clarified, so that we send a signal that we're open for business as it relates to biogas. We'd like to see more of that investment here in the province.
Okay, operator, you can put through the next caller, please.
Next caller is Aaron Collins from CBC National News. Your line is open.
Hey there, thanks for taking my question. This is a question for Minister Sigurdson. And sorry to get back to the tariff questions, but this one's a little different, I suppose. We have tariffs on canola oil and meal coming in on Thursday. Curious if the province has had discussions with producers about how some potential mitigation to the impact of those tariffs, especially with the April ones looming, might be progressing.
Yeah, definitely. There are two situations to discuss there. Of course, the federal government announced tariffs on China related to EVs, steel and aluminum, in which there was a retaliation by the Chinese government, in which they initiated a anti-dumping investigation, which affected the canola industry. They have now pushed even forward to putting a tariff on pork peas, as well as canola cake meal and oil. This, of course, is affecting the price of canola. What I would say is that I would hope that the federal government gets back to the table to address this issue. This is a federal trade issue. Our federal government needs to step up to the table. Canola Council, our Alberta canola producers are expecting the federal government to re-engage with China right now and find an immediate resolution to this issue, understanding that this is incredibly impactful for one of our largest value commodities in Canada.
Is there
Yeah, just to follow up then. You mentioned obviously this is a response to the federal tariffs on Chinese, at least partially. Do you think those tariffs were a mistake? Is that what you're suggesting by the federal government? And should the federal government be doing more to help producers deal with the impact of those tariffs?
Well, listen, when it comes to international trade, those are federal issues. What I'm saying is it's time for the federal government to re-engage and positively start having conversations with our important trading partners to ensure that we're building relationships to avoid these types of situations that we're seeing. The federal government needs to step up for our producers right now and find a resolution to these issues. It is a federal issue. Of course, we advocate to the federal government on behalf of our farmers and ranchers. We have been having active conversations with the federal government to push them to find both ways they can assist our canola growers across Canada, but as well to move forward to engage in conversations to try to find a resolution and an end to these trade disputes that are happening right now.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have for today.